Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Bastie. And welcome back to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by our title sponsor, Holy Chuck Burger. Chuck, what's going on?
Hey, Kim, how's your summer been so far?
Oh, it's been all right. It's been hot. It's hot down here in southwestern Ontario. Some tough, long days out there, but we're managing. I'm glad you could pull me out of the sun for today to do this podcast.
Well, you think it's hot for you? Try having hair like this.
No doubt. That's why I had to take a little bit off the top just to survive.
You're rocking
Jesus.
that vanilla ice look going right there. What's going on with that?
It's hot, man. I can't be having too long a hair, but I got to keep her stylish, so you do what you can do.
I hear that, man. I hear that.
Yeah.
So we're going to start today with, I guess I've had on the show previously. We did a little bit of work with Battle of the Blades with CBC back in 2010, 11, 12, took a hiatus, came back in 18, 19, and then for a COVID year in 20. And I was able to meet up with Jeremy Roenick, who was very, very good about introducing me to my love at the start of the show there, Katarina Witt, and also open up the world of Battle of the Blades. And in that journey, I was able to meet up with Sheldon Kennedy and Caitlin Weaver, who won their year in 2019, and their title sponsor was Jumpstart. And I can tell you that of all the years that I covered Battle of the Blades, I've never seen a group of women that were as tied in as the Jumpstart women were, supporting that charity for Caitlin and Sheldon's skate for the entire, it's 8 weeks or whatever it was going on as well. And then Jumpstart just became really kind of etched in my mind. And so we've had our next guest, Marco de Buono, on the show back in 2019 before it was a video set. So we're going to bring him on today and just talk about Jumpstart and all the great things that Jumpstart does for kids and gives everybody a leveling of the playing field as far as economics and opportunity, inclusivity, and just a wonderful organization that I think needs more acknowledgement and more edification for what they do in the community as well. So we're going to have Marco de Buono join us.
All right. Well, I'll get out of here, Chuck, but I'm very excited to hear from Marco and what you guys have to talk about.
All right. Thanks, buddy. We'll see you at the end of the show.
Yep. See ya.
And there he is, our most special guy for today, Marco de Buono. Marco, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chuck.
Yeah, like I said, this has been 4 years or so since we had you on the podcast last, back in 2019, when it was just simply a podcast and we didn't get to see your good-looking face. So I thought we'd just start this all over again. And just like life after COVID, it's reached us all. And I just thought there's a whole new brand of issues that are dealing with families and kids. So I thought we'd just revisit having Jumpstart back on the podcast. But before we get to that point there, I thought we'd just introduce you and give you an opportunity just to speak a little bit about your journey and how you got to Jumpstart and just, what you do there. Obviously, you're the president now in the last year, but you've been there since 2015. But I just thought we'd just give you an opportunity in your own words just to describe your journey.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've always been passionate about child health and wellness, and that's really been the thread that's guided my career and ultimately got me to Jumpstart. I have a background in health and well-being. Got my PhD at the University of Toronto. Never wanted to be an academic. Always wanted to be an advocate for child health and wellness. So I did a little bit of work in the private sector. I did a bit of work in the not-for-profit sector here and in the United States. And at the tail end of our stint in the U.S., I made the decision that I really wanted to get back into grassroots support for kids and youth, but through a corporate lens, because that's, it corresponded to the time where a lot of companies were starting to invest in proper corporate social responsibility, or now they call them ESG or community or social impact strategies. And the one company that stood out in my mind was Canadian Tire, and through the work that they had been doing already with Jumpstart since 2005, I thought that would be a great home for me to bring my skills and abilities. And I aggressively pursued, AKA, I hounded the heck out of the board members that I knew at the time. And thankfully, I was able to get a role back in 2015 and have been grateful for everything I've been able to do with Jumpstart since.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you actually hounded them as well, because I have this thing in my mind where corporations, they're always thinking about their shareholders. I've got this story in my head that, they got a brand that they want to be able to promote for people to buy their product or service. But again, it's like, how they connect to their audience, where we have the ability to spend our tax dwindled dollar at the choice of where we want to go. Why am I going to Canadian Tire, for example? And I was building a backyard hockey rink in my place on the Scarborough Bluffs. And I got every single thing that I needed from Canadian Tire simply because that's what they were doing in the community. And I wanted to reward that behavior that Jumpstart was doing, that Canadian Tire was actually using in the grassroots programs. So I just thought we'd speak a little bit more about like what programs you've created, the purpose of why you've done it, and what the impact you've found so far.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Since 2005, the big focus has always been giving kids of all backgrounds the opportunity to leverage the power of sport and play so that they can become the best version of themselves. I know a lot of times we think of sport as a way for kids to become the next big superstar or to represent their national team, and it's okay for kids and their parents to dream about visions of stardom and professional sport careers and things like that. But for 99% of us, participating in sport as a kid is going to offer us the opportunity to develop life skills that are going to help us for the foreseeable future, right? So we forget that we have friends that we make through sport participation when we're young. We learn about teamwork. We learn about resilience and grit, like how to get up from a fall and how to get up from a loss. We learn about how to manage conflict. You're not going to throw your gloves every time someone says something or does something that's, not going to make you too happy. So you learn all these skills that are transferable into school and into work over the long term. And that's what we want to focus on by giving kids a chance to play. So at the early days of Jumpstart in 2005, it was all about providing funding to kids and their families so that they could participate in any sport they wanted. But as we got deeper and deeper into the dynamics of creating access for kids from lower income backgrounds, we realized we needed to take a more inclusive approach to sport. And that's when we started to introduce all kinds of new programs.
Yeah, and I love what you said about, using sport as the hook to really guide kids into their life skills as well, because these are the things as well that I think most parents often miss when they're misguided about competition, winning. And I always used to say that if you're really focused on winning, you're missing the whole point of the experience. Because I was lucky enough to interview Mr. Snyder, who owned the Philadelphia Flyers for almost 50 years. And I got 6 minutes with him. And, the very first billionaire that I was ever able to interview. And I was just absolutely amazed at his humility and his connection to the Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation, where he says, Chuck, we use hockey as the hook to give these kids life skills. And he had 3,000 kids in the South Philly area that he created the Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation, and then gave them gear, gave them coaching, mentorship. And what he found was that with this practice, with the leveling curve of opportunity, these kids develop self-esteem. They develop confidence. They developed, repetition. And a big thing these days for now kids is perseverance. Like everything is instant everything for these kids these days. And now it's the first opportunity to say, hey, how do you become resilient when life kicks you in the face? How do you step up to that? So like, I'm glad that you're kind of curating that form so that way these kids can get that and have experience of just being kids, like obviously sports creates that bondship. But I just thought you'd speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. One of the best examples of how we leverage that is one of our newest programs that is intended to create a level playing field for girls and young women. I'm not going to get all academic on you and your guests, but the reality is, girls, particularly as they hit their teenage years, they drop off from sport way faster than boys do. And it's
Mm.
not difficult to look at a television broadcast or look at a professional sports stream to recognize that we don't have as many women represented in sport as we should, considering how talented so many of them are. So to get at the root cause of that, we actually developed a new program we call it Play to Lead, and it's all about creating those bonds and networks for girls and young women, and also drawing the link intentionally between sport participation and all the skills that they can take on and present them with the full spectrum of opportunities that they may be able to experience or explore professionally as they get older and graduate out of high school and college and university and whatnot. So the program, for example, draws the link between sport and communication, sport and perseverance, sport and well-being, sport and teamwork, sport and social connectivity. And we take the girls through 6 months of basically building muscle memory between these skills and what it means for them in the future. But at the same time, we're opening their eyes to all the career options that exist in sport: broadcasting, communications, management, uh, coaching, uh, therapy, training, all of it, the full spectrum, because most people don't realize all the things they could do through sport. It's not just the athletes that are part of the equation. And as they get older, we create a bigger and bigger network. Our goal is to, over the next 5 years, put 1,200 girls from across Canada into this program and develop this network of peers who are going to be able to lean on each other for support because they've gone through this experience together, and create a network that, as you know, social networks are key when you're looking for professional opportunities that will grow up together through the ranks of sports, so that our goal ultimately is to change the face of sport as we see it today through this program, to have more girls and young women represented as they get older and enter the ranks of professional work.
Yeah, and I know that I've got a 14-year-old daughter as well, and growing up as a alpha male playing hockey my entire life, I've always had this I don't know, this drive, to be the best I possibly can be, and kind of exclude everybody else. And I think in my journey, I'm 51 now. In the last 14 years since my daughter came around, it's kind of softened my Grinch heart. And now I really see women as the future, as our great leaders, with their abilities to connect, to have empathy, to have vulnerability, to share, to be amazing athletes using those life tools, like you said. And then, when life after sport catches us, 99.9 of us will never go to the show and never sign $1 million contracts. What do we do? Like you go into business, or you go into school, and then you become better leaders. You have better entrepreneurs, you have better social connections, you have better communities, with these leaders. So you're not even just producing healthy young females, you're producing the next generation of leaders.
Exactly. That's why we call it Play to Lead. It's a play on words, particularly specifically for that purpose, right? Because we know that these will become the next leaders in sport or through sport in whatever ranks of whatever sector they may want to work in as they get older.
I wanted to really segue that and kind of connect to the opportunity that you're providing, because there's a rising cost of sport. And hockey especially, it's just not a cheap sport at all. It's incredibly expensive. So there's a select few people that are able to play the level of hockey they can play and attain, especially at a higher level, without help. And obviously with Jumpstart, curating that as well. I wanted you just to speak to the rising cost of sport and see your view on it and how you mitigate it.
Yeah. So first, just to give you a sense of how prevalent this problem is. When I joined Jumpstart in 2015, we had survey data that about 1 in every 3 families in Canada found it difficult to afford the cost of sport. Didn't mean they were low income, but they were they found the cost of sport somewhat unaffordable and a bit of a barrier to participation for their kids. This past January, we conducted a similar survey and found that 44% of families, so almost 1 in 2 now, are telling us that they find it difficult to afford the cost of sports. So we've definitely seen, whether it's true inflation or whether it's just perception, we're seeing families perceiving that sport is just not as affordable as it was as little as 4 or 5 years ago. We also know that community organizations at the grassroots level are struggling. Their costs have gone up, whether it's operational costs, so you can imagine facility lease costs, rental costs, equipment costs, insurance, salaries, all of that has gone up. And they've had to, the majority, 65% who report to us, tell us that they've had to pass those costs on to parents. So for many parents, it's not really just perception. It's the reality that they're seeing an increase in participation fees across the board. COVID had a little bit to do with that. The economic headwinds that we're all experiencing right now have a little bit to do with that. But either way you slice it, parents are paying more for their kids to participate in sport. And so the way to mitigate that is, we can certainly, from Jumpstart's perspective, continue to provide funding to families and community organizations to keep those costs low, or to at least prevent them from continuing to go up. But we're going to have to really reassess, the value proposition around sport, so that we reprioritize it as an area for investment for well-being and for the sake of our kids. In the same way that we send kids to school, and you've got public schools that provide great programming to kids at no cost, we need to think about sport and participation in recreation, physical activity, as a way to invest in our kids and our communities. And there's data, Chuck, that validates the importance of this. So Group in Calgary back in 2019 did this amazing study showing that the economic contribution of the sports system in the Calgary area alone was well over $3 billion of activity per year to the local economy. That's restaurants, retailers that sell equipment, hotels, you name it. If we don't support sport in a sustainable way, we're going to lose a lot of that economic activity. And then all the employment. They estimated that there were over 40,000 jobs in the Calgary area attributable to sport and physical activity as a sector, right? So there's an economic argument to be made about making sure that sport remains accessible for the vast majority of Canadians. But more importantly, there's a health and well-being argument that has to be made about the importance of sport. And just quickly, coming out of the pandemic, parents told us that they noticed real declines in their kids' mental health. Oh, yeah. We know that. But for the parents who said that their kids weren't able to participate in sport and recreation during the pandemic, which is most kids in Canada, the mental health impact was even more significant. So we know that there's a strong contribution of sport to well-being. So the argument is there. We know there's an economic contribution of sport at the local community level. So the argument is there. The decision is ours whether we want to create a sustainable path for all Canadians to be active.
And I think that you're just so well ahead of the curve on this that, I've been saying this for 10 years, especially when it comes down to mental health, the connection between youth and between communities. I mean, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that during COVID, we always talk about people who are addicts and talk about how they choose to use. And these are these coping mechanisms that they use. Well, sober people were no different. You took away their gyms, you took away their churches, you took away their ice sports, you took away their entertainment, outside in their community, and then watched all of us, online just go, batshit crazy with each other. And the impact of that was like, this is our coping mechanisms. This is our mental health that we had. And it really stretched that, especially, there's a lot of families that I know that still haven't come back from those conversations of what happened during COVID when you took that away from us. So there's that underlying current that, whether it be sport or community or mental health, these are all things that you've brought up here That, I mean, I've been saying that for 10 years, but the data now is all there, which quantifies it. We had a great conversation with Maple Leaf Sport and Entertainment. They created Change the Game, and they did all the quantification as well. And it wasn't, rocket science that they came back that they're dealing with what the parents are dealing with post-COVID, and the impact that came back with the disconnection, lack of social interaction, confidence, self-esteem, all these things. Anxiety was a massive thing, depression that came back, and parents just didn't have the ability to understand how to connect with that. I wonder if you could share a little bit of what you found post-COVID, inside of the data, inside of your experiences, after, developing Jumpstart and then having to put it on pause, obviously because of COVID, the impact it had on you.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've touched on it. The mental health piece is the one that comes up continuously, right? And we're not talking about, clinically diagnosed mental health. We're just talking about noticeable declines in a child's mood and behavior, whether, again, you mentioned it, increased anxiety, lack of social interaction, decreased ability to self-regulate, right? So throwing temper tantrums more often, and just being in more of a negative mood. Those are things that parents report back to us as really, really common coming out of COVID. But the great news is, as soon as you start to get those kids into really well-designed and safe sport programs where, the goal is not to create the next Connor Bedard, but the goal is to create the best version of Jimmy, Sally, et cetera, then they start to improve almost immediately. When you have a coach or youth activity that actually cares in that child and is looking out for everything in their best interest, their mental health starts to improve almost immediately. And not just that, but we're hearing that a lot of kids are struggling in school. A lot of kids are struggling to find a way to participate actively in school. Sport is also a really important way we can incentivize kids to participate more actively in school. We have the data to show that kids will perform better when they're more active, when they're engaged in physical activity and sport more regularly. And we can't ignore, especially coming out of all the conversations that we had in early 2020 and continue to have around diversity and inclusion, we cannot ignore the massive potential that sport has to create a level playing field for everyone to feel safe and welcome. I mean, this is the original vision that Nelson Mandela espoused around sport being the great equalizer, sport being the great leveling playing field. If we design programs properly, they really can be a vehicle for inclusion and equity, but we have to be intentional in the way we do that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because obviously there's a big pressing issue out there in the world with equity. Inclusion, diversity. It's one of the 4 themes that we've had on the podcast for the past 10 years. There's a buzzword of inclusivity. What I wanted to ask you is, how do you make it safe for kids? How do you reach out? What are the things that Jumpstart does that makes kids come to the forefront before they see the genius in themselves? Obviously, there has to be somebody on your side that recognizes that and curates that as a safe place, and be able to say, hey, everybody's welcome here, no matter what you look like, no matter how tall you are, no matter what your skin color is, no matter what your belief systems are. Sport is a great equalizer, like you said, and come to the playing field and let's have some fun. How do you create that inclusion?
Well, the first thing, it's a great question. And the first thing we forget, right? We're adults. You mentioned you're 51. I just turned 50. Most of my team is in their, mid 30s to 40s. We're not kids anymore. The first and most important thing we can do, and I know that my peers at MLSC and other organizations do the same thing, ask the kids.
Yeah.
What is it that's preventing them from feeling included and feeling safe? For example, when we came up with our Play to Lead program for girls and young women, not to go back to that necessarily, but we listened to what girls had to say about why they were dropping out of sport. What were the things that they were seeing that made them feel excluded or unheard or unlistened to?
And I want to press you there. Can you share a few of those? Because I'm very curious on some of the reasons what they chose to share with you.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, there was a study that we published with Canadian Women in Sport. We've done two now rally reports where we show that girls will say, for example, that the biggest driver for them participating in sport isn't the competition. They're competitive and they will be competitive. We see that. But their biggest driver, their biggest motivator for participating is a social interaction with other girls and young women. So having coaches recognize that the incentive is going to be the social cohesion rather than the competition. The other thing that girls will tell us is that they feel that there's not a lot of regard paid to a lot of the changes that they go through as they get older. So a lot of the hormonal changes,
Yeah.
the going through puberty is not an easy experience. It's not the same for boys and girls. I know that sounds like a ridiculous statement to make, but coaches don't acknowledge that. So something as simple as saying, yeah, you know what? Maybe the white shorts are not a good idea to have as the, uniform for all the girls to wear because it
Yeah.
might make girls self-conscious that, as they mature and they age. It's small. So asking kids, what is it that is keeping you from feeling really welcome here and from feeling like you are heard and you are included is going to shed light on a lot of this. And that's part of what's the change the game research that MLSC did was getting to. And it's the methodology that we use as we design programs and we advise our community partners across the country how to create those safe spaces is listen to the kids.
I think it's one of the biggest things that I regret about growing up, not knowing how to effectively, my dad was in the armed forces. So I was a base brat. I grew up on bases my entire life, and we just were told to do something. We followed orders. And my dad used to say, if the coach says something to you, it's the exact same thing as I said it to you. If the teacher says something to you, it's an extension of me. Any of that authority follows that line. And, I grew up trying to coach just like that, and it just failed miserably. Rather than sitting there, starting off the very first day would have been amazing for me to just to say, hey, listen, I'm Chuck. You know, I have ADHD. My brain works differently. I have very short attention span. I daydream a lot. I have an amazing ability to hyper focus, and I'm an amazing listener. But I will sometimes do this and do that. But I can repeat every word that you said in the context of how you said it. I'm paying attention to you. I may not look like I am. And that would have gone a long way with my ability to understand that my coach gets how I learn versus like we're all going to teach you the same way versus understanding that neurodiversity is broad. It's a spectrum and figuring out, hey, there's a kid over there. And now that I know what I've been trained now to know what to look for in neurodiversity or non-neurodiversity and seeing this of the red flag or the indicator or whatever is like showing up right away and taking the kid aside and say, hey, tell me about that. Tell me about
Yeah.
your experience with that. And like, how would I be able to help you a little bit better? How you feel more supported in this moment? Can you share that with me as well? Because I really want to learn this. And then that would create a totally different way of that kid now being heard, understood, respected, and accepted as who they are showing up as. And then now you've got connection. And great teachers do that.
You're so right. And not only does it benefit that child, but changing that approach, taking that approach with one child improves the experience for all of them.
All of them.
I'll use the example of how we build our inclusive spaces across the country, right? We certainly engage with parents and children of kids with disabilities to understand, what is it that's preventing your child and you from enjoying a playground or a basketball court or a skate park. Working with our vendor partners, we're creating designs for these spaces that are reflecting some of the things that we're hearing from these kids and these parents. But when you walk onto one of our play spaces, whether it's our big playgrounds in every province and almost every territory, we haven't built in none of it yet, or you walk onto a multi-sport court that we built, or even a para hockey rink or a skate park or a splash pad, you don't stand there and think, well, this was created for kids with disabilities. you look at it and it's teeming with kids of all shapes and sizes, all makes, all backgrounds, all interacting with each other. That's what inclusion is. It's a space for everybody, and everybody has a space. One of my favorite stories about one of our playgrounds, we had a parent of a child in a wheelchair tell us that they went to one of the parks that we built, the playgrounds that we built, and they saw a bunch of kids on this. It's effectively a merry-go-round, except it's not like the ones you and I probably grew up with that shredded our knees. It was designed for kids in mobility devices and wheelchairs, and there were kids climbing all over this thing. And one of the boys on it told everybody to stop and signaled over to this child in a wheelchair. Come on, we're gonna make sure you've got your space on here. Join us so that we can all go crazy on this thing. The mom had never seen that before, where other kids who didn't have disabilities engaged with her child who was in a wheelchair. And she felt, wow, game changer, right? Because you've created a space where everybody is enjoying it, not just one group or at the exclusion of another. And again, that's what inclusion is. And so, again, that was all born from the simple act of asking parents and kids, what is going to make you enjoy the space? How can we change this divide? How can we change this merry-go-round so that you feel that you can use it without, having the support of a parent or an adult to help you enjoy it? And that's the product, kids playing together.
Yeah, and I think the ripple effect of that, not even just for the person in the wheelchair, but everybody around that now has
Yep.
seen, how did we make space for this person, or how is this person made space for in order to show up? And then now you've planted a seed in that person's mind, so that way they say, now you have a ripple effect. I used to say this with creating scholarships or foundations in a person's name who's passed away, who was a great leader. I had this thing about teachers. Like I firmly believe that we've all had that one teacher in our life that saw the greatness inside of us that we couldn't see in ourselves at the time, and really got that gift out of us, and really gave us the wherewithal to pursue it, or to encourage it, whether it be a music teacher or an athletic teacher or economics, or when it comes to anything that you can think of. And I can think of 3 off the top of my head that were absolutely instrumental in that, that curated that. And without those, I'd be a completely different person. And there's also one teacher that came through, that really came and asked me, like, you seem a little angry. Like, can you tell me why you're angry? Can you tell me why you're bigoted towards these people? Because I was in the military. And then it was just really about taking off the layers of understanding what that was. And I can't thank that person ever enough for the amount of peace of mind and like quality of life I will now have, as opposed to being an angry young Irish guy, growing up, on bases that just blamed everybody else around them rather than looking inside. Might want to look at that. What creates that? And where I'm going with this is that takes a team. It takes a team of teachers. And I wanted to segue that back to your team as well with Jumpstart, and have you kind of acknowledge them, or be able to say what they bring to the table, how they do it, and how hard they work to give this gift to families and kids.
Yeah, I thank you for this opportunity to share a bit about that. I mean, we obviously have our team here at Jumpstart. We're a team of 30 people, some across the country, that are engaging with communities in every corner of Canada to help give kids a chance to reach their full potential through sport. But you started the broadcast talking about Canadian Tire and values, and I have to say that one of the most amazing things about being affiliated with Canadian Tire Corporation is that community giving and this notion of leaving spaces and places better than the way you found them is inherent in the DNA here. And we're fortunate that we have, all 500 plus Canadian Tire dealers across Canada, and, tens of thousands of corporate store and head office employees, and the vendors whose products are in our stores, all backing us. Our board, our executives, they're all behind Jumpstart. And our team feels that. Our team of 30 is really a team of tens of thousands of people across Canada who are giving kids an opportunity to shine and become the best version of themselves. We just came off of Jumpstart month in the month of June. And, yes, we raise money in store, and we're grateful for every customer who walks into a Canadian Tire, Sport Check, or Marks and donates 1, 2, 5, or, anything they can. What's really awesome too is witnessing our employees across the country, holding bake sales and selling products and doing dunk tanks and getting pied in the face and doing hot wing challenges. All of that, they raised over $1.5 million in 30 days of bake sales and dunk tanks and pies in the face. It's incredible. It motivates our team of 30 to go out and do more and more and more. And this year, we're on target to reach 430,000 kids across Canada. That's almost double what we were doing before the pandemic, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to leave any stone unturned. The more people support us, the more we're going to get out there and get resources into the hands of the kids that need it the most.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't actually acknowledge our local Canadian Tire owner here, John Satozik in Kincardine, Ontario. John has done tireless work in the community here in Kincardine, especially during COVID. Tireless supporter of local sports, minor hockey, minor soccer, the junior hockey team. He could have put the Canadian Tire sign on the scoreboard in the arena, and across the top of that, he put Jumpstart up there, and didn't have to do that, but it was obviously important to him as well. And I think he works more hours there than anybody else does. But just a proud community guy, working hard. And again, whatever he says, hey, listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be dollars. It can be volunteer hours. It can be social media posts. There's 1,000 different ways. Please just get curious and ask me how you can contribute. So I just wanted to segue that by going to your donor network and just saying, how can people get involved with Jumpstart, or either volunteer or be able to, create events or fundraisers or be part of these things or even donate?
Yeah. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share that message with your listeners. The best thing to do is to visit jumpstart.canadiantire.ca. That's our website, and you'll find on there how to get involved, right? You just click on that tab and you can create your own local community event. You can join an event that we've already got underway. Or you can make a donation online. And if you're more comfortable walking into your local Canadian Tire or Sport Check or Marks, if you have one in your community, you can do that. The store staff generally know what events are going on and how you can support Jumpstart through them. So you don't necessarily have to visit our website. And for all of those people who are more comfortable with social media, we're on Instagram at CT Jumpstart. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook, a little older crowd, but we're on Facebook, and we're on LinkedIn too. So all of the information about the work that the charity does and how you can support us is there. And I want to send this message out to everyone. 100% of your donation will go right back into your community. So Canadian Tire Corporation pays the salary of everyone on our team, so that every dollar of every donation that is made by any customer or vendor or anyone to Jumpstart goes right back into their community, and you don't have to worry about administrative costs coming off the top of that. So that's a little piece that I wanted to share with your listeners.
That's amazing, because that's probably one of the bigger blocks that most people might have. And if I give $100, does $20 go to your charity versus $80 going to the charity and $20 going to your administrative costs as well? Not to say that would stop people, but at the same time, if you're giving 100% of the proceeds back, it just goes to transparency of like what you're committed to giving this back into the program. And just good on you for just, God bless you for doing the work that you're doing as well. I mean, you're a doctor. I don't think everybody realizes, you have a PhD. There's 1,000 places you probably could be going somewhere else, making probably a way more money And the fact that you've been doing this work, we just like teachers, we just need more people like you. I call them PLUs, people like us, that you see the difference that it makes. It kind of creates a little healthy addiction. When you see, if I talk to your Jumpstart volunteers, or even at the Battle of the Blades, I'm like, why do you do what you do? And it's like, well, look around. Like, this is addicting. Like, when you get to see the power of people helping people, it's powerful stuff. And the ripple effect of that, where you see these kids 5 years, 10 years afterwards, and they come back to you and they remember you and say, hey, thanks for coaching us. Thanks for setting that up. That was a time of my life. And it never leaves them. And to be fair, it's also just really good business, for Canadian Tire, because, I always say this with Scotiabank, but, if you start playing hockey and every single place that you go to is a Scotiabank arena, when you open up your first bank account, it might be, more orange than green when you do something like that as well. But I mean, it makes things sustainable. And that's the most important part, because you can't help people if you're not sustainable. You can't help yourself if you're not filling your own glass, doing your own work, being happy. You can't help anybody else from an empty glass. So I think, like you said, putting this money back into sport, putting it back into community, it creates that generation of like people helping people, where the money, the economics, the mindset, the mental health all comes full circle. And then people just can go out there and just be human beings and, take away from what they've had at work that day, and have a little bit of quality of life as well.
Yeah, you're so right. We're celebrating our 18th anniversary this year. We were founded in 2005, and if you think about it, I had this realization earlier this year when I was traveling somewhere, and I ran into two young women who were university aged, and they recognized the Jumpstart logo on a T-shirt I didn't even realize I was wearing. But we've been around for 18 years, which means that if you're 18 or younger, you've grown up every year of your life knowing that you, your family, your friends, your community could count on Jumpstart being there to give you a chance to reach your full potential through sport and play. And when I thought about that, I mean, I got goosebumps, because, you're right. I chose this work because I really believe in the value that sport brings to society, and particularly for kids and youth. And to be afforded the opportunity every day to come in here with my amazing team and all of our tens of thousands of awesome supporters and customers around the country who donate when they walk into one of our stores, to be given the opportunity to help shape a kid's life and give them that opportunity to reach their full potential with something as simple as sport and play every single day is it creates a heck of a vibe, every single day, and it's a real privilege to be able to do it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of that with your listeners.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Marco. I'm just glad that you can make the time to join us on the show as well, because we like to talk about things, in a world that's post-COVID, where people are still now dealing with, mental health issues or depression or anxiety. Like, we need more wins. We need more good stories out there. And I got to go back to my experience with Jumpstart, with Sheldon Kennedy and Caitlin Weaver from Battle of the Blades, or Anthony Stewart and Violetta Afanassieva. I always butcher that name as well. And honestly, like, I got the chance to watch Sheldon and Caitlin from the very start, from day one of opening camp, the Upper Canada College, where Ron McLean came out. We made a whole day of it as well. Got to meet them, sit with them, talk to them first off the camera, just to kind of get to know them a little bit, and just like ask you, like you said, Sheldon, you've got a million places that you could have gone. Why Jumpstart? And just everything that you've said about the inclusivity side, the safe side, everything Sheldon's platform basically is Jumpstart as well. And now he has the Respect group, which he's done really well with to curate as well. But I just thought we'd queue up some pictures here for you as well, and just kind of walk you through them. And you can just kind of walk through and just tell me what you see.
Yeah. So again, one of the beautiful things of one of our inclusive playgrounds, this is called the Friendship Swing. And that's exactly what it's intended to do, is to create a space for more than one kid to enjoy the back and forth movement of a swing rather. It's lower access than a normal swing, so it's a bit lower to the ground when it's at its resting position, and it creates a bit more of a stable sensation because it's got the tethers on two sides at the same time. So it's not like a typical swing, so the child doesn't feel like they're going to fall off all of a sudden. And you see there, a beautiful picture, right? You've got two kids. That's all you see. You don't necessarily notice right off the top that the girl on the left has mobility devices on her legs. You just see two kids with giant smiles and a mom having a great time pushing them in a playground. And that's exactly what our goal was. Same thing here.
I want to go back to that last one, just to go back and just say, you say two kids there, but I see a dog there on a shirt, or is that, but I'm wondering if that dog gets his hair cut the same place I get my hair cut at.
I'm not going to comment on that one, Chuck. I'm not going to. I don't have enough hair to make that, make any judgments there. But and the next picture too, it's one of the climbers in our playground, and unless you really pay attention, you don't notice that one of the kids on there has a prosthetic leg.
Oh yeah.
And the great thing about not noticing that right off the top is you just think, wow, those kids are pretty high up in the air. Like, that's pretty bold. And then you realize, wow, just because the child has a prosthetic leg clearly doesn't mean they have a limitation. And look at that. They're right up there with two other kids that seemingly have no physical disability, right?
I think that actually goes to that kid's experience of just always, like, that's always going to be there for that kid.
Exactly.
With his left leg, and just having that one moment of, just for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, a fleeting moment of just being able to forget that he doesn't have another leg like the other kid does, and for him to share in that moment with those kids there and smile and just be a kid, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, the smiles are going to be the common thing with all these pictures, right? They're always going to be kids and smiles here too. So, you've got kids on a ramp system that are moving around the playground. You've got the two in the foreground in their wheelchairs. The one in the background has a walker, but they have no restrictions. They're able to get, they don't even need to be pushed, quite honestly, by a parent or by a friend. They could get around that ramp system all by themselves and interact with every piece of equipment in that playground. And that's how we designed it. So I see this picture, and again, it warms my heart because I know that these kids are being given every opportunity that any other kid is to enjoy every ounce of space in this playground. Yeah, this is the first graduating class of our Play to Lead program. So our Girls in Sport Leadership program. We launched a pilot last year with about 40 girls from the Greater Toronto area. We were aiming for as broad a group of diverse participants as possible, and you see that reflected here in the faces of all these amazing young women. And again, the smiles on their faces. This was day one of a 2-day program to kick it all off. All of these girls have graduated from this program. They went through the 6 months of the program. Many of them took us up on our offer. We offered them free coaching education, so they've become certified coaches, many of them. Some of them have already implemented programs in their own communities. And we're so excited about what this means. Like, watch out, because this is a generation of leaders that are going to take the world over, bull by the horns and just go. And this year we have 200 new girls that are coming into the program, 100 in Alberta, 100 in Ontario. So we're going to add to this cohort of 40. And again, over the next 5 years, up to 1,400 girls that are going to go through the program. So I'm excited. If we can replicate these smiles on 1,200 girls and young women, we're going to have, hit a home run for sure.
And the last one here? No.
Yeah, same. So the girls who did our Play to Lead program, we gave them the opportunity to experience what inclusive sport looks like. So this is a notion we call reverse inclusion, where whether the girls were in a mobility device and had a physical disability or not, we taught them how to play wheelchair basketball. And what was really awesome about this is we had one girl in a wheelchair who participated in the first program, and she was the one that all the other 39 participants turned to for direction and help and leadership. That's not a position that they often find themselves in with an opportunity to do. So the fact that a young woman with a physical disability was able to be in a position of leadership for 39 other amazing young women with talent was just a fantastic opportunity. And again, look at the smiles on their faces. They're all having a great time, and they're learning a new skill, and they're learning what inclusion is all about.
Yeah, that's really heartwarming. I just look at that and I just think to myself, there probably is a thought in their head where they're just like, how did this happen? I mean, this is new to us, and people always leave us out, or it's just normal that we can't be included because of no ramps, or because of no sport access, or there's nobody like me. And then when you're surrounded by people like me, like other people get your journey, they get what your obstacles you're facing every day. You can share something with a person like that 10 times more who will get it versus someone who just will never have that experience and just not understand that experience and not minimize it, but have it, have it felt minimized, because I can't fully understand your experience as a handicapped person or a person of color or a person of disability or whatever that is too. So to create that opportunity for those people to sit together is just wonderful. I think we have one more picture left as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is just a group of kids. This was taken at the Ability Center in Whitby, which is, an amazing facility that we support. They have programs for kids of all abilities. They also have a program called the Academy for Student Athlete Development, which allows kids who are on more of a competitive pathway to sport, like playing for their provincial teams or whatnot, to benefit from proper education, not have to sacrifice between their education and their participation in sport. This is just a group of young participants at one of the after-school programs at the Ability Center. Again, you see kids of all abilities there, right? You've got some kids who seem to not have any disability, although we don't know whether they have an invisible disability, and some, using mobility devices, but they're playing together. And that again, the common thread, they're playing together. And again, the smiles on their faces. What you mentioned earlier, if you could go back and do things differently as a coach, I say to coaches all the time who ask, how can we improve what we do for our kids? Ask them at the end of the session, did you have fun?
Yeah.
And if they say no, ask them, well, what could I do better to make sure that you do have fun next time? And that word fun, that'll unpack a whole bunch of things. That'll unpack safety, inclusion, all of that. But that's the biggest check mark for a coach is if you see smiles like that on your kids' faces once they're done, your program at the end of every day. So happy to see more pictures like that anytime.
Yeah. And we have a couple videos as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't include Sheldon Kennedy. And before we start off with this, I just want to, I always get a little choked up about this as well. I'm from Manitoba. My dad's last posting was at a small little radar station in a little place called Beausejour. Population 2,000 people. We're about 45 or 50 minutes northeast of Winnipeg. But the base was a radar station that was only known for catching Santa on primary radar every year on December the 24th, and that was what it was known for. And when I said to Sheldon, I said, oh, I'm from Manitoba too. He said, oh yeah, whereabouts? I'm like, man, like, you don't even want to think this small little like town that nobody's ever heard of called Beausejour. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, my brother Troy lives there. And just getting to know Sheldon about, I said this before and I'll say it again. There's people out there that go through trauma, that stuff that is just unspeakable, that happens to human beings. And it's all they can do just to recover from it, if they can at all. And there's people who actually can recover from it, which is amazing. They can have quasi, lives again, getting through that with therapy or whatever can help them. Then there's people like Sheldon who can go through that experience, go through the therapy, and then be able to connect with a community of people so that way other people don't suffer like he did and what they went through as well. And that makes him a special kind of hero to me. And he has set up his entire life now just to make sure that inclusion, equity, inclusivity, diversity, respect is all incorporated in all this programming as well. Back in 2019, he had to lose about 30 pounds to get on Battle of the Blades.
Yeah.
He just had a new child as well. His wife was still coming from Alberta at the time and flying in. And I got to spend a fair bit of time with him before, even at the hotels, and asking him what he's doing this for. And he represented Jumpstart. Like I said to you before the show started, I've never seen a more enthusiastic team of people than the Jumpstart people that were at every single skate, going on social media, asking for them to vote for Sheldon and Caitlin. And then they ended up winning. And they didn't even just win. They just destroyed everybody with, I think they had 2 or 3 10 out of 10 dances as well. But I thought we just line up one of the couple of videos that we have as well with Sheldon and Caitlin talking about Jumpstart. Cam, if we can cue that up. Here we go.
Thank you to everyone who voted for us last week on Battle of the Blades.
This week, we're going to go back in time, back to when I was a kid and first put on a pair of skates.
We are so proud to support Jumpstart because we believe every kid deserves to find a sport they love, just like we did when we were kids.
That's right, and thank you for voting for us. You can go and watch us at #ShellyCanSkate and make sure that you vote for us so we can help you help the kids. Boom.
You know, Marco, just like you say about fun, like first of all, he's got no business wearing glasses that cool. Then you've got Brian McGrattan, skating behind there, photobombing that as well. I mean, that set was just like that every single day. They were just so interactive, and there were no losers. And I would also be remiss if I didn't thank Sandra Bezic, the brainchild of Battle of the Blades. I mean, she brought this together when nobody would listen to her. And it's a really expensive event to put on and to accommodate. And their team does an amazing job of being able to put that on every year after year. And it's been, a few years since they've been able to do that as well. But profiles every single charity that someone skates for. And you see people out there who are just connected to their charity or their foundation or their cause or their purpose in life. And I think, when you get 8 skaters times, pairs, so now you have 16 charities, they all get profiled. And that was actually something that actually opened up Jumpstart for me, that I didn't see. And then they ended up winning $100,000 for Jumpstart.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, just to start with your notion of the goofing around, look, they're sending a really strong message there. They're adults. They've been professional athletes. Sheldon was a pro hockey player. Caitlin's a professional skater. They're sending a message. Sport is supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to put 8-year-olds in shirts and ties and send them to a hockey rink. It's supposed to be fun. And until we keep reminding ourselves it's okay to have fun, we're going to keep missing the point. So I was glad to see them goofing off there. Yeah. Our friends photobombing in the background and Sheldon being Sheldon. But, absolutely right. Their passion came through the entire time they were there. To have a platform like Battle of the Blades on CBC where, we can promote the work that Jumpstart and all the other charities that were being promoted and chosen by the other skaters, the work that we do around the country. It's amazing. There is no other platform like that that I know of, and I do hope that they continue with Battle of the Blades or some version of it at some point, because again, there's a lot of great work that's being done out there by a lot of charities just like Jumpstart, and a lot of great supporters like Sheldon who want to promote those causes. So hopefully we'll give them that platform again.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I really love the Battle of the Blades. I've met so many amazing people there. Again, Ron McLean just does tireless work. People don't see the genius behind Ron's work. I mean, I've had Ron on the podcast before, and he's just a really selfless person when it comes down to Battle of the Blades. I've never seen anybody who has a memory like Ron McLean has, and the ability to get out there with Kurt Browning and connect to that audience every single week. And I mean, you mentioned fun, but I mean, that's a really fun event. I think they keep the tickets at something like $8 or something very, very reasonable. And, you know, they do a great job. CBC was amazing at letting us come in, you know, in the exit interviews. And I've never seen more alpha characters who have been professionals at every level, you know, come down for an interview, and you're thinking to yourself, they just got, you know, voted off. I have to have an interview about them being rejected, and, you know, they didn't make the grade. And not one skating couple were just like, hey, we raised $25,000 for our charity. We had a great time. We got to meet a whole bunch of great people. This has been an amazing experience for all of us as well. And, you know, that's what just Battle of the Blades did. I want to go with community on that one as well. The people on the set, the hairstylists, the dress rehearsal people, like, they're all fantastic. You know, Elijah Balde, I mean, like, I another one I've had on the podcast as well, but, you know, he does this backflip on the ice and everybody sees him as well. And I mean, I think his gram blew up to, like, you know, he's got 1 million followers now. And everywhere he goes, I mean, it's like, I don't know that cat, but I just want to be around him because his energy is just so good. He either has to be the fakest person in the world that I know of, or he's going to be the kindest person. It turns out he's just the kindest person as well. So I think we have one more video as well of Sheldon and Caitlin. I think I'd like to play. So Cam, if you can cue that up.
Vote for Sheldon and Caitlin so that Jumpstart can win
$100,000.
$100,000
On Battle of the Blades.
cbc.ca/battle vote. Let's go. Boom.
Let's go. Boom.
$100,000. So what was the impact of Caitlin and Sheldon winning the $100,000? Describe the check giving ceremony, what happened, how that rolled out, and the ripple effect that it created.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we were so engaged from the very beginning, and everybody in the organization was aware of what Sheldon and Caitlin were doing. So we invited them to the head office to do a check presentation here in front of all the employees and the executives and everyone. And it was just so impactful because we wanted to show them how grateful we truly were. Right. It's not every day you get $100,000 check from a supporter, you know, and we didn't want to lose sight of that. You know, $100,000 for an organization like ours, where every dollar goes right back into a community. We were able to help, you know, over 1,000 more kids that year.
Wow.
Right? Like that's not insignificant, you know, because on average we have this rough estimate that, you know, it takes about $100 to help a child between our community grants and our grants for individual families. It's a little lower now because we you know, we can reach more kids with fewer dollars the way we structure some of our programs. But, you know, on average, that's about another 1,000 kids that we're able to help. So it's not an insignificant number. And, you know, it's quick to add up when every cent, every dollar that comes in the door goes right back out to a community. So that's one of the things that Sheldon was really grateful for, was that we were able to turn that check around really quickly and get it out. We didn't sit on it, didn't sit in a bank account. We got that money out as right away before the end of that year. I mean, they hosted Battle of the Blades in the fall of 2019. We had spent that money before the calendar year was up. We weren't sitting on it in some bank account, because as soon as we have the money, we put it out there into a community to make sure that we're getting to as many kids as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I go on about Sheldon as well, but Caitlin Weaver, she has about a dozen charities that Caitlin supports as well. She's a consummate supporter in the LGBTQ community, just a wonderful human being as well in her own right as well. So if I'm not giving her the credit that Caitlin does, not only that, but if I talk to Sheldon, it's very intimidating for every single male skater out there putting on pics. And he always used to say, he's like, listen, you know, she's like the Sheldon whisperer. You know, like, I put on these skates and she's like, this is good. Like, you're going to fall. You're going to get back up. I'm going to help you up. We're going to take it slow. We're going to go through all this. You're going to get your stride, you know, and they both went through crazy hardships at that time, you know, with family life and flights back and forth, and to do all this, to put all this together. So it's never lost on me, you know, that when people give their time up, and yes, the $100,000 curates another 1,000 kids. But again, like even, Anthony Stewart and Violetta as well, they didn't raise as much money as they did, but Anthony lost 30 pounds for that show as well. He was dealing with a newborn. His wife was pregnant at the time. He was still going down to CBC and doing radio and TV as well. He had to leave Scarborough at 4:30 in the morning to be there for 6. I mean, there's a lot of personal sacrifice that nobody sees behind the scenes as well on your end, that nobody really sees of what it takes to create this. And if you've been to any event anywhere, it didn't just happen by magic. So for you guys to do what you do right now, there's a lot of people in your team. I just thought we'd take a chance right now and see if you want to thank them, acknowledge them for being the team for Jumpstart, for creating this opportunity for kids that nobody gets a chance to see.
Yeah, for sure. Again, our team here in Toronto are 30 staff that, get the money out to kids in every corner of the country every single day of the year. They're outstanding. But we truly couldn't do it without, supporters like you, Chuck, your listeners who are going to walk into a Canadian Tire store or a Sport Check or a Marks or go online and make a small donation. Our dealers, our employees across the country, the vendors that support us, there is literally, you talk about a network, a community. We have this unbelievably massive community behind us from coast to coast to coast that grows every single year, that allows us to give every kid in Canada the opportunity to just shine. And we would not have been able to reach 3 million kids in our 18 years of existence, now well over 3 million kids in our 18 years of existence, if it wasn't for that massive community. So to every single one of you, whether you donated $1, whether you donated 100,000, or whether you just donated your time, just thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Awesome. Marco, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing us a little bit more behind the scenes, what most people would never see behind Jumpstart. I think it's better for context that people actually see, how this works, why it's there, who the brainchild of it was, and how this gets created. So I want to thank you for jumping on the show today as well. Is there anything else that I've missed at all that you wanted to add before you go?
No, again, just thank you to everyone, all your listeners who are going to hopefully be motivated by what they heard today and come out and support us in some way, shape, or form. And thank you to you and your producer for giving us the opportunity.
You're welcome. We're going to have all of Jumpstart's socials and links up on the podcast as well on YouTube. So feel free to jump on board, join us, follow, like, share. Sharing is caring. And once again, Marco Buono, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. That's Marco Buono, the president of Jumpstart from Canadian Tire, on our show today as well. I get blown away by the people helping people aspect. There is a whole team of people behind Marco as well, that he was very, very generous to acknowledge as well, and probably minimize how much people actually contribute on that side as well. But just like teachers, like they're irreplaceable in society, where they're able to go out there and help other people feel more included. People helping people, I say before, it's powerful stuff. But now I'm rambling, so I'm going to bring up my producer, Cam LaRock, and see what Cam's take of this was and his new Vanilla Ice haircut that he's rocking.
Yeah, once again, Chuck, great show. You do it every time. I don't know how, but you do it. It was a little bit early on that you guys talked about it. You talked about it throughout the whole show, but I just like how you brought up about how sports aren't all about going pro. It's about having fun, but not only that, it's about the lessons that come with it and just the takeaways from sports and what you learn. You learn to sacrifice, you got to get up on those mornings and do what you got to do. Some days you don't want to, stuff like that, resilience, all that. I just like the message that Marco and Jumpstart are trying to send and everything that goes with that.
I could say there's one thing that I want people to take away here, but I'd be lying. Because I think just there's so many things. Like I think I'm a big fan of perseverance. Like life is always going to push back on us all, always. It's a matter of, do you have the capacity to reach down deep, not take it personally, put it into context, breathe, restart, get help, whatever tools or resources that you need. So programs like Jumpstart, creating this at the grassroots level, gives us abilities like I've spent 10 years going through therapy to unlearn stuff that I had as a kid, that if I would have been exposed to this as a kid and learned it moving up forward, I learned faster. I include other people. Like, you can go further together. You can't go as fast, but you can go further. And that's the more important thing. But the other thing is just inclusivity, just the fact that they allow people to show up regardless of economics or disabilities or neurodivergence or whatever that is, that Jumpstart creates that platform to allow every kid out to feel heard, understood, respected, and accepted, and come into play, and that they have people on staff there to curate fun, is what Marco said, that I just love. I mean, that's the hook that every single parent can get behind. They don't care about
love that.
How well your kid plays in sports, or goes to the NHL. God bless you. But the fact is that the vast majority of them never will make it past a certain level. But then we have better entrepreneurs, healthier human beings, better leaders, like Mark was talking about, that they're creating these leaderships. And that, to me, is the most important thing. Creating that leadership as well gives other people the ability to see what's possible to lead that as well. So, I mean, Canadian Tire Jumpstart has a real big place in my heart as well. I'm just thankful that Marco got the chance to jump on the podcast again with this post-COVID. And if you like the podcast, please feel free to share it. If there's anybody out there that you feel this would connect to, whether it be disabilities or that they need a handout, or if you want to donate, we'll have all the socials and links up on the podcast as well. Anything else, Cam?
That's it from me, Chuck.
All right. Well, cool. We really appreciate you joining us on Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. We want to thank Holy Chuck Burgers and Johnny Pursulis for being a curator of community as well. We are going to make some donations as well to Jumpstart from our sponsors as well. So we'll be in touch with them as well. And that way, from that point as well, we can actually create, people helping people, which is powerful stuff. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.